The radar operator's coffee went cold as he stared at the impossible signature on his screen. 3,000 feet above the Bering Sea, an unidentified aircraft was performing maneuvers that shouldn't exist in any tactical manual. The blip moved like liquid mercury, flowing through the air in patterns that defied everything he knew about aerodynamics. Senior Chief Petty Officer Marcus Reeves leaned over the console, his weathered face reflecting the green glow of the display. 23 years in naval intelligence, and he'd never seen anything like it. "Sir, we've got a problem," the operator whispered, though the secure communications room held only 3 people. The aircraft was descending rapidly toward Grid 77 Alpha, where SEAL Team 6 was conducting a classified maritime insertion. Reeves felt ice form in his stomach. That grid coordinate was beyond top secret. Only 12 people in the entire Pacific Fleet knew about tonight's operation. The mystery deepened when the aircraft's transponder suddenly activated, broadcasting a call sign that made Reeves' blood run cold. Phantom 77. That designation had been retired 8 years ago, buried so deep in classified archives that even he needed special clearance to access the files. According to official records, Phantom 77 had died in a helicopter crash over Afghanistan, taking its pilot's secrets to an unmarked grave at Arlington National Cemetery. But here it was, alive and airborne, vectoring directly toward the most sensitive special operations mission of the decade. The aircraft's flight path suggested intimate knowledge of SEAL insertion protocols, knowledge that should have died with its original pilot. Reeves grabbed the secure phone, his hands trembling slightly as he dialed a number he'd memorized but hoped never to use. "Wake up Admiral Chen," he told the duty officer. "Tell him Phantom 77 just came back from the dead." Below the waves, Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison adjusted his diving mask and checked his team's positioning one final time. The SEALs moved through the dark water like ghosts, their rebreathers leaving no trail of bubbles to betray their presence. Morrison had planned this mission for 6 months, accounting for every variable from tidal currents to enemy patrol schedules. Everything was perfect. Everything except the growing vibration he felt through the water, a low-frequency hum that suggested something massive was approaching from above. Morrison's tactical instincts screamed danger, but his mission orders were explicit: maintain radio silence until objective secured. Whatever was coming, his team would face it alone, 30 feet beneath the surface of one of the world's most dangerous seas, with no backup and no way to call for help. The vibration grew stronger, and Morrison began to wonder if tonight's mission had just become a trap. Commander Evelyn Ghost Nakamura felt the familiar weight of skeptical stares as she entered the briefing room at Naval Air Station Whidbey Island. The assembled officers represented the elite of maritime special operations, SEAL team leaders, intelligence analysts, and senior aviators who'd collectively accumulated enough combat experience to fill a small library. Their expressions ranged from polite professional courtesy to barely concealed disdain. She recognized the look. It was the same expression she'd faced for the past 15 years, ever since she'd earned her wings and dared to believe she belonged in their exclusive fraternity. "Gentlemen," announced Captain Theodore Walsh, his Boston accent cutting through the tension like a blade, "meet Commander Nakamura. She'll be providing close air support for tonight's insertion." The words hung in the air like an unwelcome fog. Close air support. The phrase carried weight in special operations circles, representing the thin line between mission success and catastrophic failure. When SEALs called for air support, they needed someone who could deliver precision ordnance within meters of friendly forces, someone whose judgment could mean the difference between bringing everyone home or explaining empty chairs at the debriefing. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, fresh from his pre-mission briefing, studied Nakamura with calculating eyes. He'd requested their best pilot for tonight's operation, someone with extensive combat experience in denied territory. What he'd received was a 5'4" woman with prematurely gray hair and flight suit that had seen better days. Her service ribbons told a story of competence, but Morrison had learned to trust his instincts over paperwork. Those instincts were currently suggesting that someone had made a very expensive mistake. "Commander," Morrison said, his tone carefully neutral, "my boys will be conducting a maritime insertion in hostile waters. We need someone who can provide immediate response if things go sideways." The unspoken question lingered. Are you that someone? Nakamura met his gaze without flinching. She'd heard variations of this question throughout her career, from flight school instructors who doubted her physical strength to squadron commanders who questioned her ability to handle the psychological pressure of combat. Each time, she'd responded the same way, with quiet competence that spoke louder than any boastful declaration. "Sir," she replied, "I've flown 237 combat missions across 4 theaters of operation. My aircraft and I will be precisely where you need us, when you need us." The briefing room fell silent. Outside, the sound of jet engines warming up echoed across the tarmac, a mechanical symphony that would soon carry them all toward an uncertain destiny. The pre-flight inspection ritual had become Nakamura's meditation. Her fingertips traced the familiar contours of the FA-18E Super Hornet, checking for stress fractures that could prove fatal at 30,000 feet. The aircraft bore the scars of countless missions, small dings from debris, faded patches where maintenance crews had replaced damaged panels, and the subtle discoloration that came from repeated exposure to salt water and extreme temperatures. Like its pilot, the Super Hornet had earned its reputation through persistence rather than flash. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, her crew chief, watched from beside the aircraft with the protective intensity of a mother hen. Rodriguez had been maintaining Nakamura's aircraft for 3 years, long enough to develop an almost telepathic understanding of the machine's moods and quirks. He'd learned to read the tiny signs that preceded mechanical failure. The slight vibration in the starboard engine that appeared only at specific power settings, the hydraulic system that ran 3 degrees warmer than specifications indicated it should. "She's ready for you, Commander," Rodriguez called out, though both he and Nakamura knew the inspection was more ritual than necessity. The aircraft had been meticulously prepared, every system tested and retested until it performed with mechanical perfection. But rituals mattered in military aviation, where the margin for error measured in milliseconds and the cost of mistakes was calculated in lives. Nakamura climbed into the cockpit, her hands automatically moving through the startup sequence she'd performed thousands of times. The Super Hornet came alive around her, its systems awakening with electronic precision. Heads-up display illuminated with flight data, radar painted a picture of the surrounding airspace, and the radio crackled with the controlled chaos of a major operation getting underway. "Ghost 77, this is Tower," came the familiar voice of the air traffic controller. "You're cleared for immediate departure, Vector 270, climb and maintain flight level 250. The call sign sparked a brief moment of uncomfortable recognition. Phantom 77 had been her original designation, retired after the classified incident that had nearly ended her career. Tonight's mission had brought back more than just memories. As the Super Hornet rolled toward the runway, Nakamura could see Morrison and his team boarding their insertion vehicle, a specially modified submarine that would deliver them to their target under cover of darkness. Their success depended on dozens of moving parts working in perfect coordination, and she represented just one element in that complex equation. The radio frequency buzzed with pre-mission communications as various units reported their readiness status. In a few hours, those same frequencies would carry very different traffic, urgent requests for support, tactical updates, and possibly casualty reports. Nakamura pushed the darker thoughts aside and focused on the immediate task of becoming airborne. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would meet them with the same quiet determination that had carried her through 15 years of doubting stares and whispered skepticism. The Super Hornet's engine spooled up to full power, pressing Nakamura back into her ejection seat as 22,000 pounds of thrust accelerated her into the night sky. Below, the lights of Whidbey Island fell away like scattered jewels, replaced by the vast darkness of the Pacific Northwest. The transition from ground to air always felt like a rebirth, a shedding of earthbound limitations in favor of three-dimensional freedom. But tonight's flight carried different energy, a tension that seemed to permeate the aircraft systems and settle into Nakamura's bones. The mission profile was routine enough: provide overwatch for a special operations insertion, maintain station at designated coordinates, and respond to requests for close air support if the situation deteriorated. She'd flown similar missions dozens of times, establishing herself as one of the Navy's most reliable close air support pilots. The designation, Ghost 77, fit her perfectly, though not for reasons her colleagues understood. Nakamura had earned the callsign not through spectacular aerial maneuvers or dramatic combat victories, but through her ability to appear exactly where needed, exactly when needed, without fanfare or recognition. She was the pilot commanders requested when they needed someone reliable rather than flashy, someone who could execute complex missions with minimal drama. Ghost 77, contact Seahawk Control on frequency 254.75, came the instruction from departure control. The handoff to the specialized unit controlling tonight's operation represented a crossing of thresholds, a movement from routine training flight to operational mission with real consequences. Seahawk Control, Ghost 77 checking in, flight level 250, mission ready, Nakamura transmitted, her voice betraying none of the anticipation building in her chest. The response came immediately, crisp and professional. Ghost 77, Seahawk Control. Proceed to Station Alpha 7, maintain current altitude and airspeed. Insertion team is 45 minutes out from target. The coordinates placed her roughly 60 nautical miles west of the Olympic Peninsula, well within range to provide rapid response if Morrison's team encountered resistance. The Super Hornet settled into its assigned patrol pattern, a wide racetrack course that would keep Nakamura positioned for immediate response while remaining outside enemy radar coverage. The aircraft's sensors painted a detailed picture of the surrounding environment: civilian air traffic following established flight corridors, a Coast Guard cutter conducting routine patrol operations, and the subtle electronic signatures that indicated military activities in progress. Nakamura had learned to read these electronic tea leaves, to identify the patterns that separated routine operations from developing crises. Tonight felt different from the beginning, charged with an energy that suggested more complexity than standard mission briefings had revealed. 30 feet beneath the surface of the Bering Sea, Morrison's team moved through water so cold it threatened to numb exposed skin within minutes. The specialized diving suits provided thermal protection, but couldn't eliminate the bone-deep chill that came from extended immersion in Arctic waters. Morrison checked his compass bearing for the third time in as many minutes, confirming their approach vector toward the target facility. The intelligence briefing had described a remote research station conducting activities that fell well outside normal scientific parameters. Satellite imagery showed the facility's above-ground structures, but Morrison's team suspected the real secrets lay below ground, accessible only through underwater entry points that conventional surveillance couldn't detect. Their mission was straightforward: penetrate the facility, gather electronic intelligence, and extract without detection. Petty Officer First Class Williams, Morrison's communications specialist, tapped his shoulder and pointed upward. Through the dark water, they could see the subtle glow of artificial lighting filtering down from the research station. The facility was larger than expected, its underwater infrastructure extending much further from shore than satellite imagery had suggested. Morrison made quick calculations in his head, adjusting their insertion plan to account for the unexpected complexity. The vibration Nakamura felt through her aircraft grew stronger as she maintained her patrol pattern. Something was approaching from the northwest, moving fast and low enough to avoid most radar detection. Her threat warning systems remained silent, suggesting whatever was out there wasn't actively targeting her aircraft. But the Super Hornet's passive sensors detected electronic emissions that didn't match any known friendly aircraft. Seahawk Control, Ghost 77, she transmitted on the secure frequency. I'm detecting unidentified aircraft approaching my patrol area from the northwest. Request guidance. The response took longer than expected, filled with the kind of electronic static that suggested heavy encryption and multiple relay points. Ghost 77, maintain current station. Do not intercept unknown aircraft unless directly threatened. The instruction struck Nakamura as odd. Standard protocol called for immediate investigation of unidentified aircraft in restricted airspace, particularly during active special operations. Someone with significant authority had modified those protocols for tonight's mission. The unknown aircraft's electronic signature grew clearer as it approached, revealing characteristics that made Nakamura's breath catch in her throat. The emissions profile matched no current aircraft in the U.S. inventory, but bore unmistakable similarities to classified programs she'd encountered during her time with developmental test squadrons. Projects that officially didn't exist, aircraft that flew only in the deepest shadows of black operations funding. Morrison's team reached the facility's underwater perimeter, where their thermal imaging revealed an intricate network of access tunnels carved directly into the seabed. The construction was far more sophisticated than their briefing had indicated, suggesting engineering capabilities that exceeded anything in the public domain. Morrison signaled for his team to hold position while he reassessed the tactical situation. The Super Hornet's radar finally acquired a solid lock on the approaching aircraft, revealing flight characteristics that defied conventional understanding. The unknown contact was performing maneuvers that should have been aerodynamically impossible, turning at angles that would generate G-forces capable of killing any human pilot. Yet the aircraft maintained perfect control throughout sequences that would have torn most fighters apart. Nakamura found herself witnessing something that shouldn't exist, an aircraft that represented either a quantum leap in military technology or evidence of capabilities that extended beyond current scientific understanding. The implications sent ice through her veins. Even as her professional training demanded, she maintained position and await orders. The unknown aircraft's approach vector was taking it directly toward Morrison's insertion point, arriving with timing that seemed far too precise to be coincidental. Someone or something knew exactly where the SEAL team was operating and was moving to intercept them with technology that rendered conventional defensive measures obsolete. Nakamura's tactical display suddenly erupted with new contacts as additional aircraft emerged from what had appeared to be empty sky. The electronic warfare suite that had detected one impossible aircraft now revealed 6 more, all converging on the research facility with coordinated precision that spoke of advanced planning and intimate knowledge of tonight's operation. The mission had just transformed from routine special operations support into something that threatened to rewrite everything Nakamura thought she knew about military aviation and the secret programs that operated in its shadows. The lead aircraft in the formation broke away from its companions and began a descent that brought it within visual range of Nakamura's Super Hornet. Even through the darkness, she could make out a configuration unlike anything in her 15 years of military aviation. The aircraft's lines flowed with organic grace, as if designed by someone who understood aerodynamics at a level that transcended current engineering principles. Ghost 77, this is Phantom 77, came a transmission on a frequency that shouldn't have existed. The voice was distinctly female, carrying an accent that suggested extensive time spent in multiple regions of the world. More disturbing was the call sign itself. Phantom 77 had been declared killed in action 8 years ago, its pilot officially dead and buried with full military honors. Nakamura's hands tightened on the flight controls as her training warred with the evidence of her own senses. Dead pilots didn't transmit radio calls, and retired call signs didn't appear on operational frequencies. Yet her radio was receiving clear communications from someone who claimed to be flying an aircraft that belonged in the classified sections of intelligence archives. Phantom 77, Ghost 77, Nakamura replied, her voice carefully controlled despite the chaos building in her chest. Identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came with disturbing familiarity, as if the speaker knew exactly who she was talking to. Evelyn, you know who this is. We need to talk, and we don't have much time. The use of her first name sent alarm bells through every level of Nakamura's consciousness. Military communications protocols strictly prohibited personal identification on operational frequencies, particularly during classified missions. Someone was either violating fundamental security procedures or operating under authorities that transcended normal military command structures. Below the surface, Morrison's team had penetrated the facility's outer perimeter and was discovering infrastructure that challenged their understanding of the mission parameters. The underwater tunnels were lined with materials that absorbed sonar signatures, creating acoustic shadows that would hide activities from conventional surveillance. More concerning were the electromagnetic emissions detecting equipment revealed, signatures that suggested the facility was generating power levels inconsistent with scientific research. Williams tapped Morrison's shoulder and pointed to his detection equipment, which was registering approaching surface contacts moving at speeds that exceeded known naval capabilities. The research facility was receiving visitors, and their arrival coincided suspiciously with Morrison's team reaching the facility's most sensitive areas. Evelyn, the facility your SEAL team is approaching contains technology that doesn't belong to any earthly government, came the impossible transmission from Phantom 77. Your boys are walking into a situation that could start a war nobody's prepared to fight. The words carried implications that struck Nakamura like physical blows, suggesting knowledge of classified operations and threat assessments that should have been available to only the highest levels of military command. The formation of unknown aircraft had arranged itself in a defensive perimeter around the research facility, their positions optimized for both offensive and protective operations. Nakamura realized she was witnessing the deployment of military assets that represented either the most classified program in U.S. history or evidence of capabilities that belonged to someone else entirely. Her Super Hornets threat warning system suddenly came alive as targeting radars locked onto her aircraft from multiple directions. The electronic warfare suite identified emission signatures that matched no known weapon systems, but the targeting geometry was unmistakable. She was being painted by weapons that could engage her from ranges that exceeded her own defensive capabilities. Ghost 77, recommend immediate withdrawal from current position, came an urgent transmission from Seahawk Control. We're detecting multiple hostile contacts in your area. But Nakamura's tactical display showed Morrison's team was already inside the facility, committed to a mission that was rapidly revealing complexities nobody had anticipated. The impossible aircraft designated Phantom 77 moved closer, its configuration becoming clearer in the ambient starlight. The craft appeared to blend conventional fighter design with aerodynamic principles that suggested engineering capabilities decades beyond current military technology. Whoever was flying it possessed either access to the most classified military programs in existence or represented capabilities that extended beyond current human technology. Morrison's team had reached the facility's central chamber, where their night vision equipment revealed technology that belonged in science fiction rather than military intelligence reports. The central chamber of the research facility contained equipment that challenged everything Morrison thought he knew about technological capabilities. Massive cylindrical structures extended from floor to ceiling, their surfaces covered with displays that showed data streams in languages he couldn't identify. The power requirements for operating such equipment should have been visible to satellite surveillance, yet intelligence briefings had described the facility as conducting routine oceanographic research. Petty Officer Williams was documenting everything with specialized recording equipment, his training overriding the shock of discovering technology that seemed to belong to a completely different civilization. The electromagnetic signatures his detection gear was recording exceeded anything in known military inventories, suggesting power generation and information processing capabilities that redefined what was possible. Morrison signaled for his team to begin their intelligence collection procedures while maintaining security watch for facility personnel. The chamber appeared to be automated, its operations conducted without human supervision. That automation included defensive systems that were beginning to respond to unauthorized presence in ways that exceeded conventional security measures. Above the surface, Nakamura found herself in aerial ballet with an aircraft that seemed to exist outside normal physics. Phantom 77 moved through maneuvers that should have generated G-forces capable of killing any human pilot, yet maintained perfect formation flying that suggested either revolutionary technological solutions or pilot capabilities that transcended biological limitations. Evelyn, your government has been conducting research into technologies recovered from sources they don't want acknowledged, came the transmission from the impossible aircraft. That facility represents reverse engineering efforts that have progressed beyond what anyone anticipated. The words carried implications that struck at the foundation of everything Nakamura thought she understood about military technology and the secret programs that developed it. The Super Hornet's sensors were recording data that would revolutionize military aviation if it could be properly analyzed and understood. Flight characteristics that defied conventional aerodynamics, propulsion signatures that suggested entirely new approaches to generating thrust, and electronic emissions that indicated information processing capabilities beyond current technological understanding. But the most disturbing aspect was the growing certainty that Phantom 77 was being flown by someone who had intimate knowledge of Nakamura's background, her capabilities, and her involvement in classified programs that were supposed to have been terminated years ago. Someone who knew details about her career that were buried in personnel files with security classifications that exceeded most military clearances. Morrison's team discovered that the facility's central chamber was connected to a network of similar installations through communication systems that operated on principles they couldn't identify. The intelligence they were gathering suggested a coordinated research program that spanned multiple locations and involved technological capabilities that had been deliberately concealed from conventional military oversight. The defensive systems that protected the facility were beginning to activate, responding to unauthorized intrusion with countermeasures that exceeded anything in Morrison's tactical experience. Energy discharges that interfered with electronic equipment, acoustic signatures that disoriented human nervous systems, and detection capabilities that seemed to penetrate even the most advanced stealth technologies his team employed. Williams tapped Morrison's shoulder urgently, pointing to readings that showed multiple contacts approaching their position from directions that should have been impossible given the facility's underwater layout. The research station was revealing defensive capabilities that transformed it from scientific installation into military fortress, with technological advantages that exceeded conventional understanding. Nakamura's aircraft was being systematically analyzed by sensors aboard Phantom 77, scanned with detection capabilities that penetrated her Super Hornet's electronic warfare defenses as if they didn't exist. The unknown aircraft was gathering intelligence about her capabilities, her weapons systems, and possibly her intentions with efficiency that suggested either perfect familiarity with her aircraft type or technological superiority that rendered conventional military security measures obsolete. The formation of aircraft surrounding the research facility had arranged itself in patterns that optimized their ability to control airspace while maintaining defensive positions that could engage threats from multiple directions simultaneously. Someone with extensive knowledge of aerial tactics and strategic thinking was coordinating operations that transcended any single military organization's capabilities. The radio frequency crackled with transmissions in languages that Nakamura's translation equipment couldn't identify, suggesting coordination between forces that represented either the most classified military program in history or evidence of capabilities that extended beyond current human technology. The implications were staggering, challenging fundamental assumptions about technological development and military capabilities. Morrison's team had completed their intelligence gathering and was beginning extraction procedures when the facility's defensive systems activated with lethal intent, transforming their covert reconnaissance mission into a desperate fight for survival against technology that seemed designed to counter every tactical advantage special operations forces possessed. The extraction phase should have been the simplest part of Morrison's mission, a carefully planned withdrawal that would leave no evidence of their presence. Instead, the facility's automated defenses had transformed the underwater chambers into a maze of lethal obstacles that challenged every aspect of his team's training and equipment. Energy discharges that interfered with their navigation systems left Morrison relying on compass bearings and dead reckoning to find their way back to the extraction point. The acoustic countermeasures that disoriented human nervous systems forced his team to communicate through hand signals while fighting vertigo that made swimming in straight lines nearly impossible. Williams was struggling with recording equipment that had been damaged by electromagnetic pulses specifically designed to defeat military electronics. The intelligence they had gathered was stored on hardened storage devices, but the facility's countermeasures were systematically targeting every piece of technology his team carried. Above the surface, Nakamura found herself caught between impossible aircraft that were demonstrating capabilities that challenged everything she thought she knew about aerodynamics and propulsion. Phantom 77 continued to fly in formation with her Super Hornet, matching every maneuver with precision that suggested either perfect familiarity with her aircraft's capabilities or pilot skills that transcended conventional training. "Evelyn, your SEAL team is in immediate danger," came the urgent transmission. "The facility's defensive systems are designed to prevent extraction of the intelligence they've gathered. We need to coordinate our response, or they won't make it to the surface." The words carried implications that struck at Nakamura's fundamental responsibilities as close air support pilot, suggesting that Morrison's team faced threats that exceeded conventional military understanding. The Super Hornet's targeting systems were painting solutions against multiple aircraft, but the engagement geometry was unlike anything in Nakamura's tactical experience. The unknown aircraft were positioned in three-dimensional formations that maximized their defensive advantages while minimizing her ability to engage them effectively. Someone with extensive knowledge of air-to-air combat was coordinating operations that demonstrated tactical sophistication beyond any single pilot's capabilities. Morrison's team had reached the facility's outer perimeter when Williams detected approaching contacts that were moving through the water at speeds that exceeded any known submarine or underwater vehicle. The research station was receiving reinforcements, and their arrival timing suggested coordination that implied either perfect intelligence about Morrison's mission or surveillance capabilities that had monitored his team's activities from the beginning. The electromagnetic emissions that Williams' equipment had recorded were revealing patterns that suggested the facility was part of a communication network that spanned vast distances. The technology they had discovered represented either the most classified military program in existence or evidence of technological capabilities that belonged to someone other than recognized military organizations. Nakamura's aircraft was being systematically evaluated by sensors that penetrated her electronic warfare defenses with casual efficiency. Phantom 77 was gathering intelligence about her capabilities, her training, and possibly her psychological profile with techniques that suggested either perfect familiarity with her background or analytical capabilities that exceeded conventional military intelligence methods. The formation of aircraft that surrounded the research facility was beginning to execute maneuvers that revealed coordination protocols optimized for multiple engagement scenarios. Someone was preparing for combat operations that could involve everything from close air support to strategic interdiction, with tactical flexibility that suggested extensive planning and preparation. Morrison's team broke the surface of the Bering Sea to discover they were surrounded by evidence of military activities that exceeded the scope of their mission briefing. Surface contacts moving at impossible speeds, aircraft performing maneuvers that defied conventional understanding, and electronic emissions that suggested technological capabilities beyond current military inventories. The extraction submarine that should have been waiting at their designated coordinates was nowhere to be found, replaced by contacts that Williams' equipment identified as representing either revolutionary military technology or capabilities that belonged to forces outside recognized command structures. Morrison's team was stranded in hostile waters with intelligence that could revolutionize understanding of technological capabilities, but no way to communicate their discoveries to higher command authorities. Nakamura realized that her role as close air support pilot had evolved into something far more complex and dangerous than standard mission parameters had suggested, requiring decisions that could influence the balance of military power and technological development for decades to come. The realization that Morrison's team was stranded without extraction support transformed Nakamura's mission from routine close air support into a rescue operation that would require capabilities beyond her Super Hornet standard configuration. The aircraft carried weapons optimized for air-to-air and precision ground attack missions, but lacked the specialized equipment necessary for maritime rescue operations in Arctic waters. Phantom 77, Ghost 77, Nakamura transmitted on the secure frequency. I need immediate assistance with maritime extraction. My boys are in the water without pickup. The response came with disturbing familiarity, as if the speaker had anticipated this exact scenario and was prepared with solutions that exceeded conventional military capabilities. Evelyn, we've been monitoring the situation. Recommend you follow our lead for extraction procedures that don't appear in standard tactical manuals. The unknown aircraft began a descent that brought it to wave-top altitude, demonstrating flight characteristics that seemed to ignore the aerodynamic challenges of ground-effect flight over ocean swells. Morrison's team was fighting hypothermia as they struggled to maintain formation in waters cold enough to kill them within minutes of extended exposure. Their thermal protection suits were designed for short-duration operations, not extended immersion while waiting for extraction that might never come. Williams was using emergency signaling equipment to mark their position, but the electromagnetic interference from the research facility was degrading their communication capabilities. The Super Hornet's sensors detected multiple contacts approaching Morrison's position from several directions, but the signature analysis revealed characteristics that matched no known naval vessels. Whatever was approaching moved through the water at speeds that suggested either revolutionary propulsion technology or capabilities that transcended current engineering understanding. Nakamura found herself making decisions that exceeded her authority and challenged her understanding of military command structures. The mission parameters had evolved beyond anything covered in standard operating procedures, requiring improvisation that could have consequences extending far beyond immediate tactical considerations. All contacts, All contacts. This is Ghost 77 declaring emergency rescue operations. She transmitted on the emergency frequency. I have military personnel in the water requiring immediate extraction. The response from Seahawk Control carried tension that suggested the operation had attracted attention from command levels far above routine special operations oversight. Ghost 77, maintain current position and await instructions. Higher authority is coordinating extraction assets. But Nakamura's tactical display showed Morrison's team had perhaps 10 minutes before hypothermia made rescue impossible, while extraction assets were at least 30 minutes away under optimal conditions. Phantom 77 had descended to an altitude that brought it within a few hundred feet of the ocean surface, where it began executing maneuvers that seemed designed to generate specific water effects. The aircraft's passage was creating waves and current patterns that were pushing Morrison's team toward what appeared to be a designated pickup point. The formation of unknown aircraft was repositioning itself to provide defensive coverage for whatever extraction operation was beginning to unfold. Their coordination suggested either extensive rehearsal of rescue procedures or capabilities that transcended conventional military training and preparation. Morrison's team was fighting to maintain consciousness as hypothermia began to affect their cognitive functions and motor control. Williams was no longer able to operate his detection equipment effectively, leaving the team dependent on Morrison's navigation skills and their collective ability to survive in conditions that exceeded human endurance limits. The contacts approaching through the water had resolved into configurations that challenged Morrison's understanding of naval technology. Vessels that moved without creating detectable surface wakes, propulsion signatures that suggested entirely new approaches to underwater transportation, and approach patterns that demonstrated knowledge of extraction techniques not found in any special operations manual. Nakamura realized she was witnessing the deployment of rescue capabilities that represented either the most classified military program in existence or evidence of technological sophistication that belonged to forces operating outside recognized command structures. The implications were staggering, but Morrison's team needed immediate help regardless of the broader questions raised by their circumstances. The Super Hornet's fuel state was becoming a limiting factor as the rescue operation extended beyond planned mission parameters. Nakamura would soon face the choice between returning to base for refueling or remaining on station to provide support for extraction operations that were revealing capabilities beyond conventional military understanding. The aircraft designated Phantom 77 transmitted coordinates that would bring Nakamura into formation flying with aircraft that officially didn't exist, operated by pilots who were supposed to be dead, using technology that challenged fundamental assumptions about military capabilities and technological development. The extraction vessels that emerged from beneath the Bering Sea's surface defied every principle Morrison thought he understood about naval architecture and underwater propulsion. Their emergence created no detectable surface disturbance, as if they had materialized from the water itself, rather than risen from hidden depths. The technology represented either revolutionary advances in stealth capabilities or engineering principles that transcended conventional understanding. Morrison's team was retrieved by personnel whose equipment and procedures suggested training that exceeded standard special operations protocols. The rescue swimmers moved through Arctic waters with efficiency that implied either superior thermal protection or physiological capabilities that transcended normal human limitations. Their coordination with the extraction vessels demonstrated familiarity with rescue techniques not found in any military manual. Williams was semi-conscious as he was pulled from the water, but his equipment was handled with care that suggested the rescue personnel understood the intelligence value of what his team had gathered. The specialized recording devices were transferred to secure storage with handling procedures that indicated either extensive familiarity with sensitive materials or access to security protocols that exceeded normal military clearances. Nakamura watched the extraction operation through her Super Hornet sensors, recording data that would require analysis by intelligence specialists with clearances she didn't possess. The rescue techniques she was witnessing represented either the most classified military capability in existence or evidence of technological sophistication that belonged to forces operating beyond recognized command structures. Ghost 77, formation flying on my lead, transmitted Phantom 77 as the impossible aircraft began a climb that would take both planes to higher altitude. The flight characteristics Nakamura observed continued to challenge her understanding of aerodynamics, with maneuvers that seemed to ignore fundamental principles of physics and propulsion. The Super Hornet's engines were operating at parameters that exceeded normal specifications, but somehow maintained perfect performance under conditions that should have triggered multiple warning systems. Someone had modified her aircraft's capabilities without her knowledge, installing enhancements that remained invisible to standard diagnostic procedures. Morrison's team was aboard extraction vessels that were beginning a journey to destinations that weren't identified in any mission briefing. The intelligence they had gathered from the research facility represented either evidence of technological capabilities beyond current understanding or confirmation of military programs, so classified that their existence was denied at the highest levels of government. The formation of aircraft that had provided defensive coverage during the extraction was dispersing to destinations that Nakamura's navigation equipment couldn't track. Their flight paths seemed designed to avoid radar coverage and satellite surveillance, suggesting either extensive knowledge of detection capabilities or access to intelligence about military monitoring systems. "Evelyn, we need to talk face-to-face," came the transmission from Phantom 77. "There are aspects of tonight's operation that require explanations you won't get through official channels." The aircraft was vectoring toward coordinates that would take them to a location not found on any aeronautical chart, a destination that existed outside normal navigation references. The Super Hornet was responding to flight inputs with precision that exceeded its original design specifications, as if someone had enhanced its capabilities without leaving detectable modifications. Nakamura realized her aircraft had been selected for tonight's mission for reasons that extended beyond her qualifications as a close air support pilot. The radio frequency carried transmissions in languages that her translation equipment couldn't identify, suggesting coordination between forces that represented either the most international military cooperation in history or capabilities that transcended earthly technological development. The implications challenged everything she thought she understood about military organization and command structures. Morrison's extraction was complete, but the questions raised by tonight's operation would require answers from authority levels that exceeded normal military command hierarchies. The intelligence his team had gathered represented either confirmation of technological capabilities beyond current understanding or evidence of military programs, so classified that their acknowledgement could revolutionize global military balance. Nakamura found herself flying in formation with aircraft that officially didn't exist, toward a destination that wasn't on any map, carrying questions that challenged fundamental assumptions about military technology and the secret programs that developed capabilities beyond conventional recognition. The flight toward coordinates that existed outside normal navigation references took Nakamura over terrain that seemed designed to avoid satellite surveillance and radar detection. Phantom 77 was leading her through flight paths that demonstrated intimate knowledge of military monitoring capabilities, suggesting either extensive intelligence about detection systems or access to information that exceeded normal security clearances. The Super Hornet's navigation systems were displaying readings that didn't correspond to any known geographic features, as if they were approaching a destination that existed outside conventional mapping references. The coordinates were leading them to what appeared to be empty ocean, but Nakamura's sensors were detecting electromagnetic signatures that suggested significant infrastructure below the surface. Ghost,